begin, I'd like to ask my Heavenly Father to guide and inspire my message so that my message may indeed be His message. My name is Chris Carroll, and I am a grateful Christian in recovery from alcoholism and other issues. By the grace of God and the 12 steps, I have not had to take a drink since October 31st, 1999. For that, I am truly, truly grateful. Not I, but the Father doeth the works. I do have a sponsor. I work steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis, and I am very active in several different ministries, as well as being a GSR for my AA home group. Service work, it's good for your recovery. Now, they tell me that I need to talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Well, first, I grew up in an abusive household. To the outside world, we looked ideal. We had a nice 2-story house, lived just 2 blocks from the beach in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and my parents owned several businesses, and my dad was a part of the good old boy system in the area. So all was well, right? Absolutely wrong. My father was an incredibly angry man. Nothing my brother, sister, nor I did was ever good enough. One of my earliest memories was being shoved down to the floor, covering my head the best I could, while Walter slapped and kicked at me. I was perhaps 8 or 9 at the time. I knew that I wanted life to be different, but I never understood why. I remember lying in kindergarten. Told everybody my dad was an outlaw biker. The truth is, he was just a business owner. But I had to be different than I was. And I knew, for me, that I couldn't compete on the level of the good people, those people who got things like straight A's and did everything they were supposed to. So I went the other way. I knew if I couldn't be better, I could be worse. And I lived my life based on that principle for a lot of years. For instance, in my middle school years, I was suspended from school about 20 times. There were many detentions. Saturday morning work details was a regular thing for me. I was just a problem child. I was suspended for things like fighting, dealing pills, whatever, skipping school. I was in the mindset of I will do whatever I want to do, and you'll like it or not. I don't care. I would run to my sister's house for some relief from the home life. And at this point, I was drinking every chance I got. And I was a cigarette smoker too. We're talking the age of 7. Walter hated cigarettes, and I hated him, so it seemed like a natural thing to do. That's the kind of a mindset I had. I was absolutely angry all the time, and my rage came out at everyone around me. Nobody was safe from the great wrath of Chris. The world revolved around me. It was simply all about me, and if you didn't have anything I wanted or needed, I would just ignore you or worse. Although I went to a church at this time, I did not do it for the right reasons. I went because there were girls in the youth group. There was nothing about learning about God or Jesus. And of course, I had the chance to get away from home by going to church. And I walked to church and was able to smoke cigarettes along the way and other things. And a little bit later on, I got a job, and I was rarely at home to listen to my father or feel his backhand. Of course, the job I had, I worked at a pizza joint, and they allowed you to finish the keg of draft beer. It was a wonderful thing. So I began drinking every day at the age of about 14 or 15. My whole life became about escape. Of course, there were girlfriends and sexual behaviors, But this too was simply to escape. That's all my life was about. And at this point, I knew loneliness more than most men. The big book describes the chilling black vapor that is loneliness. Well, it thickened and settled down, ever becoming blacker. I used to pray for somebody or something to rescue me. I didn't know what was wrong. I had no idea. Just none. I just knew my life did not work. In the midst of all this insanity, at the age of 17, I got my then girlfriend, now ex-wife, pregnant. And the truth is, I didn't even like this woman. It was somebody I was spending time with while I waited to ship off to boot camp. I know that sounds sick, but, being a man, I had to marry her. Not only that, I didn't have $10,000 to have a baby born. So I had no options. And I went, and I figured the Army would solve all my problems. A steady income, have brothers in arms, esprit de corps, all that kind of stuff. I truly thought it would make me better. Guess what? It didn't. I did my stint in the service. I wasn't great. I wasn't bad. I was just kind of there. And then I went to re-up. And the master sergeant, the top enlisted man, stole the papers out of my hand and told me, "You won't be needing these, Carroll. I may be the only soldier who wasn't asked back after the Gulf War." There was just nothing impressive. At the time, all I was doing in the Army was gambling, drinking, and picking up different women. Doesn't every man do that? Isn't that what makes people happy? It's not. Of course, I used the excuse that I was lonely and my wife wasn't there to comfort me. So naturally, I turned to others to do the job. In truth, there was really no thought of her welfare at all, no thought of her at all, none of my son either. Again, I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And with the first sergeant tearing up my re-up papers, there was one more failure in my life. I was absolute failure as a husband, a soldier, and a human being. I never finished anything in my life. Nothing. Not even high school. I just didn't bother. If it was hard, I didn't do it. I was given a general under honorable conditions discharge when the goal is an honorable discharge. So I did nothing right or in the high area. I was an absolute underachiever. I used to pride myself on being a slacker. But the truth was, I couldn't be the best. So expend as little energy as possible and just get it over with. That was then. Now, my recovery actually started in 1985. I was first introduced to AA then as a part of a treatment plan I was subjected to from the Adolescent Behavioral Therapy Center that I was locked up in. I had gotten into a bit of the trouble with the law, and I was completely out of control, sexually, mentally, emotionally. And my parents were afraid I would commit suicide. So everybody, including law enforcement, thought that the best course of action was for me to do a stint in a nice, comfortable place instead of the Department of Corrections. And I was introduced to AA through that. And I have not really left Alcoholics Anonymous since for very long, although I did not work the program. I'd stay sober for a length of time, but never really got the sponsors didn't read the book, work the steps. Basically, I did nothing but went to the meetings and congratulated myself. In 1986, my sister committed suicide. And this act on January 16th continues to affect me 34 years later. She was only the first of many bodies that I'd step over on my way to sobriety. My sister had been given over to a reprobate mind. She was in the middle of an alcohol and cocaine addiction, had gotten pregnant very early, like 13, and married the man, and basically did everything wrong in life. She finally couldn't take the pain anymore and blew her heart out with a 45. I will say this, not a day goes by that I don't think about my sister, and I miss her. After that, the periods of sobriety kept getting a little bit longer. Of course, the hangovers started to hurt more. And I placed myself in a position that I could not stay drunk. I had to go through these hangovers. I was still angry and miserable, but the alcohol did not provide the relief it once did. Still, nothing worked in my life, and I still could not comprehend that AA and God were the answer. So I figured out what would fix me: another woman, or should I say hostage. I took my second wife, cleaned up for a while, and even went to church. Life started working okay. Again, it wasn't great, but it was okay. And although I did not practice it much, the God things seemed to be helping. Of course, all that had happened is I redirected my alcohol addiction for one of sexual immorality. It was easy to cheat on her and everybody else. For again, I had no heart for anyone but me. However, she found out, and she took it to the court system. It did not go well for me. And then I went out on a great big drunk. I honestly think I had plans to drink myself to death. I wanted to die. But with Kathy, I couldn't pull the trigger. And, however, dying in a car wreck or some kind of running out in front of a truck, that was okay. Yeah, I was a very sick individual at that time. Then on October 30th, 1999, I finally set a record. I went to jail 3 times in one 24-hour period. 2 counts of drunk in public and 1 for assaulting a police officer. So I'm a legend in the Horry County jail system. That's really a great thing to be proud of, huh? Fortunately, the cop I assaulted was a friend of the family's. As I said, my father was part of the good old boy system. And he chose to help me. He showed me a videotape of the assault and let me know he could take that videotape to the prosecutor and get me every day of 10 years in the state pen. We could go that way, or I could quit drinking today. And it really didn't matter to the cop. He was kind of aggravated and angry with me. Of course, I hit him 3 times, so, he had his reason. Didn't matter which one I chose to him. So what was I going to do? It took about 5.5 seconds to make up my mind. I really didn't want to be Bubba's roommate. So I chose sobriety. They put the charges in abeyance, and I walked out of that jail a free man. At that second, I threw myself into this program with the willingness that a drowning man seizes a life preserver. They told me to make 90 meetings in 90 days. I made 418. Again, the overachiever. They said, read the big book. I got a sponsor whose nickname was Big Book Bill. They said, pray. I said I didn't have a God to pray to. They said, borrow mine. And I did. And I tried it. And it worked. They said, work the steps. I said, okay. I'll try anything once. What can it hurt? Whatever they said, I absolutely did. And did to the absolute best of my ability. Although I could not put a name on this God thing, I knew I had one. And I knew he was there, and I was not him. That was important. I was God in my life for a lot of years. Now, this God has helped me through some of the worst times in my life. Even though I did absolutely nothing to deserve his help. About 3 years ago, I started studying this person called Jesus. I knew him to be a good man, a spiritual man, and even a godly man. But I had questions whether he was a representation of the Creator, the Son of God. I had many doubts. However, I did approach this question with an open mind. I went back to a little exercise that I had done early in sobriety. I wrote down what I thought a God should be, and then compared and contrasted this Jesus person with that list. Amazingly enough, he checked off all of my boxes. He is everything I think a God should be, and so much more. In this time of sobriety, I formed a faith that cannot be shaken. I have survived the death of a brother from lung cancer at the age of, he was 38, I was 31. My mother laid in hospice for over 2 years. And my father and a nephew committed suicide, as well as the death of a daughter in an automobile accident due to a drug driver. I also became visually impaired due to a prescription drug interaction that killed my optic nerves. The central fact of my life since joining AA is found in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 5 through 7. It has carried me through my life since coming to AA. The verse is, don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Today, I am on a mission. Every day I wake up, I start each day with just one thought. What can I do for the man who still suffers? There are many kinds of suffering that my life has left me uniquely qualified to help with and bring people to this person of Jesus. I am fortunate in the fact that I can dedicate myself almost entirely to service to others. And in addition to my work here at CR, I'm also involved in another Christ-centered recovery meeting. And I serve the homeless dinner. I work with some foster children. And I'm now in discipleship training, learning really deeply who this Christ is. The thing I have figured out is today I want all of God. And even more importantly, I want him to have all of me. The more I learn of the Father, the more time I spend in devotion, contemplation, and meditation with this Jesus person, the more I want to give all that I am and all that I have to him. It's like any other relationship. The more I put into it, the more I get out of it. In closing, I will tell you what my ultimate goal in life is. It is perfectly stated in Romans 12. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what is God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Now I'll put that into AA language. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then.